it's been mostly either a little bit of the Widowmaker or mostly the Hanzo. So going into a full dive scenario here, into what is going to be pretty easy kills potentially for Hus, a lot of low health targets as well. CKM as well, easy mines.
Easy, but not too easy. We'll have to see how Incipience play it as well. I mean, part of it as well is sometimes you just want to play your best game, and Incipience, if they feel that their best game on Anubis is dive, then, well, there you have it. And already the tanks just getting up into the front line. If CKM is able to continue staying safe back down here, though, then, you know, can just rain mines on. Hus getting a nice wraparound angle as well really puts a spanner in the works. It does get traded back, which is good news for Incipience. Their respawn is closer, able to finally pop CKM. He didn't quite get enough damage, and nice catch on Fearless, though. And this looks like it'll just tip the balance a bit too much in Blank's favor on the defense here. It leaves the tanks just kind of up a creek without a paddle. And off the back of that, Incipience will get repulsed.
And the disengage into a reposition from Hus is exactly what's deadly against Incipience here. So if you're Ambition, if you want to stay into the Genji, probably have to play a little bit more patient here. Wait to see where Hus is going to reposition to, then challenge him directly, because you can't allow Hus to just get free damage, free picks on your team as you push him.
And that's a Primal Rage from Savage Dab that he's kind of forced to pop by the time he was out of the trap, already at half health. There was always going to be a tough situation no matter what. And unfortunately, Incipience just getting picked off one by one on the dive. That second time around going a lot less well than the first one. Blank seemed to have started to react to this a little bit better. They're preempting Incipience's moves a little bit more tightly now.
Yeah, placing down traps at Incipience and maybe being a little bit too impatient here with their dives as well, just kind of jumping directly into where Blank are also expecting you to jump into right now, and still not enough pressure onto Hus. Still seeing a little bit too damage potential out of him, but now we move into this third fight where Ambition finally gets a Dragon Blade. Now he can finally find these picks.
Yeah, it is a shame that they don't have that Primal Rage, but they've got enough else on the board that they should be okay. Losing Xenofly's mech early, though. And I don't believe he got a self-destruct off. That is rough. Also pick on Xeon Flux. Incipience, this is just more time lost for them.
And nothing lost for Blank Esports, which they'll be quite happy with as we move into the sub 2 minute mark here. Still have to deal with the tire as well. And a tire that's going to be somewhat difficult for Incipience to shut down with this kind of composition, and very easy for CKM to pick up kills with. So this kind of Orisa, Junkrat, Widow defense here is still just working wonders against Incipience. We so far haven't seen any adaptation, but also we haven't seen a full commit with these ultimates yet.
And that's the reality when you've got that much spam damage here, is if you can just catch one person on the rotation.
That's the best pick.
Exactly. You can kind of just blow things straight apart. And yeah, the pick on Fearless is great. Following it up with a pick on Ambition is even nicer. The tide does get shut down, but it doesn't really matter at this point. The fight's over for Incipience. Cryptic taking a long time to go down. And that was a long setup for Incipience as well. This has all just been time wasted.
And the thing they can be happy with is at least the tire is off the table, but the Infrasight is back on now. Kura's looking at his next Valkyrie, and we're looking at sub 1 minute. We were talking about this 1 minute ago, and Incipience had roughly the same ultimates. They still have not had the chance to really engage.
Now finally going in for it. They had to use the Transcendence just to get in. Catch on Kura is big. Able to take out Hus with one last swing before Ambition himself went down. But they've tipped the balance here. Trill is already swapping off onto the Winston. They know when it's over who is even going to preserve the self-destruct in this instance. Incipience have finally capped the point out on this last one. And it was that Dragon Blade finally actually coming online, and Incipience being able to engage with it without losing members in the rotation. That was crucial. Now 4 minutes left as they start their attack on B.
And we're going to see here what they're going to change on to. It seems to be a full Ryan, Zarya, Goats composition, so no.
That was meant to be a goat. That was just sounded.
That's right, we'll write that one off. We'll pretend that one didn't happen.
Yeah,
what we can say is definitely happening is this is going to be a quick push, a reasonably quick push, already losing members, but
yeah,
no snowball pressure, unfortunately.
Yeah, they do catch Hus, and they are able to keep Xenofly and Savage Dab topped off slightly with just Fearless, but losing the Moira is the really rough one there. The extra healing you get on those tanks really swings it. Unfortunately, at this point, Incipience are probably a few too many members down to really overcome that defender's advantage. And that's to say nothing of the ultimates Blank have got banked up here. Hus dying again. It's really just getting picked on now. Mum, the bullies won't leave me alone. But Incipience, the bullies, they have been pushed back.
And the adaptation of the blank side, immediately you're seeing Huss changing onto the Junkrat. You see CKM now already onto the Pharah. These are heroes that's going to be very difficult for Incipience to deal with. Ambition, going to try things out with the Hog. Maybe you can hook CKM out of the sky. That's about the only real counterplay that they realistically have here, unless Xenofly is going to solo dive onto CKM. Otherwise, for both Huss and CKM, both those targets will be very, very difficult for Incipience to lock down.
Incipience do come into this one with some tools, going full wraparound, try and catch Tongue. Yeah, nicely timed with the Transcendence, but that does take that tool off the table. And the Rocket Barrage. And this is really as good as it gets for Incipience. Unfortunately, though, they've now committed 3 ultimates of their own to Blank's 4. That's something, but it leaves the economy still in Blank's favor, and Blank are the ones who come out the better for that fight. I would have really liked to see Incipience commit nothing after getting the Rocket Barrage and Transcendence. That probably would have been a win in their books.
Let's get you back out there.
As pause does sort of come through here, gotta wait for CKM to reconnect, but you know, looking at that last push, it's kind of a 50-50 scenario, right? Because you do also have a case where we've seen a lot of Incipients just kind of waiting around and not really engaging, so they're looking for opportunity. They're saying, okay, let's start things off with a hook onto Tongue. Didn't quite pick up the kill, but maybe looking for opportunity with these other ultimates. Didn't find it this time around, but what we've seen a lot of is Incipience just kind of not using ults at all. So are we waiting for Incipience to get to the last minute to finally engage, allowing Blank to charge up a bunch of ults again? I'm not necessarily sure that that's the correct option either.
And that's the thing, it's rough. It feels like nothing they do is turning out to be the right answer. You know, when they're not committing ultimates into fights, when they're not able to get them off, they're just kind of losing fights, getting picked off, and it feels really bad. And then when they are using ultimates, they're not quite getting enough out of the defenders. They're not quite getting enough out of the other team in terms of matched ultimates, in terms of those same resources for it to be worthwhile. And it feels like they're just not quite reading the situations adequately. You want to see them in that situation, burn those ultimates, and maybe burn an ultimate of their own if they think it will burn more out of the defenders. Slowly chip away at that economy, build your own up. Unfortunately, what they've ended up in a situation, they've ended up now in a situation where actually, despite burning ultimates of their opponent, they're no better off than where they started. They've still numerically got 2 less ultimates than Blank.
And the other thing that is a bit of a disadvantage to running goats here for Incipience is, to be quite honest with you, Blank are going to charge their ultimates quicker. They have a lot more beefier targets that are easier to hit, bigger health pools, especially for like guys like Huss and CKM. In CKM, you'll see this, he's disconnected, going to reconnect back in, starting up with 0 on his ult charge as a Pharah. You could probably expect him to charge that one up quite quickly, as well as Huss on the Taiwan, because big AoE damage against big fatty targets on the other side, even tanks, even who is going to get ults fast. Transcendence going to be coming out quickly from Tongue as well. That's one of the big disadvantages if you're going to play goats. That unfortunately now for Incipience, because they've lost, what is it, 1, maybe 2 fights now with the goats composition, they have to start considering how much longer can we play this, when do we want to swap, if we want to swap, because they don't have a lot of time either. It's got 2 minutes left.
Exactly. It's again the ult economy situation that's starting to bite them in the same way that it bit them a bit on Oasis, where they were never actually finding themselves in a situation where they were ahead. It's a bit of a different beast on Control compared to Assault, but there are some parallels, at least when when you're attacking the point on a Control map. It can be a lot like Assault insofar as the defender is entrenched, they're set up, and if they've got that economy advantage, you do need to chip away at that. The big difference is actually Assault is even more weighted to the defenders in that situation because they've also got the closer respawn. So they need to get big blowout fights. And I actually like that they're going with the GOATS composition to that end, but they don't make it any easier for themselves when they're not able to play that economy game, that macro game.
Well, the first fight was going to be the best one, right? Because that's before,
and it was.
And that's before Blank kind of read the composition. That's before Blank scouted up the goats. They kind of hid that one a little bit. They kind of came through. By the time Blank realized, oh, it's goats. You know, mountain goats that come
like hiding. Just imagine hiding a goat like under a box or something, trying to like walk it through customs.
Then aha. But the point is that aha moment kind of happened. And then the customs officer like,
they hadn't actually got through security yet.
No,
like,
they didn't.
Yeah, they were still going through the last checkpoint, and goes the box.
So as we do on pause here, the adaptation I would like to see out of Incipience is I want to see Cryptic probably here do an immediate swap onto Widowmaker as a sort of surprise pick. because that's how you can easily deal with CKM, and it's not something Blank would be prepared for, but they are going to go in again. 6 members here, at least.
Oh.
Ambition is on the Hanzo, but not anymore.
That was gorgeous from Huwu. The placement there was nowhere safe for Ambition to go to. Honestly, catching other members there, I believe it was Cryptic who went down in that same self-destruct, was just kind of a bonus. Incipience there had actually attacked very nicely, very succinctly as well. I kind of like adding the Hanzo in just for that added pressure, but it does kind of disrupt the, if you will, goatsiness of this comp.
Yeah, it's definitely not goatsy. We've seen Ambition, by the time Ambition swapped onto a Hog, it was definitely not goatsy. I mean, that's pork right there. So now moving on to the Hanzo here, we are seeing a Grab Dragon combo potential.
Oh, they don't need it.
But it's not happening this time.
Yeah, not... And
they do need it. Incipience do need it.
Yeah. And I mean, potential as well is the way to put it, because they've got the Grav part of that, but Ambition in 2 fights has only charged up a little over a third of that Dragon Strike that they crucially need for that combo. They don't really have 2 fights to spare.
And by the way, CKM was the one that disconnected, already sitting under a barrage. We're only about 1.5 kind of fights in there because Huwu got a self-destruct, Huss got himself 3 tire kills, so we haven't seen these big elongated fights, and yet the barrage still available.
And this could be tough. There's a bit of anti-synergy in the ultimates Incipients have up. Oh, doesn't even matter. Yeah, they're not even going to get to use any of them. And again, now Ambition has only charged up another 15% in the space of 1 fight.
And that's because these fights are ending so quickly. When does Ambition get to charge these up? If Incipients want to do that, they have to sit around. They have to wait for the poke damage.
This is rough.
Blank Esports, look at Huss now, 89%. They're just trading these LW ultimates. When one is used, the other one is ready.
And this is Ambition recognizing that as strong as that Grav Dragon combo is, they're not going to be able to pull it off in time. They need something with immediate impact. That's what this Reaper is meant to do. Good stop on the tire by Savage Dab, and they're able to close off on Huss. They just need to blast out these ultimates. Blank have used everything they have. Huwu as well, now getting back. No, not quite back in the mech. Catch on tongue as well. Finally, Ambition able to get some mileage, some business done. Shrill taking the hurt now. Savage Dab has to back off, waiting for some health, but without Xeon Flex, it's going to be tough. Nice shatter. They need to close off the extra. Unfortunately, though, CKM was able to get back.
Oh.
Guys, not for long, though. They keep the guns trained on him in overtime. Incipients make it work. Good read by Ambition. You can criticize the slow ult charge on the Hanzo, but he was smart enough to recognize they were never getting that ultimate. They needed instant impact, and the Reaper delivered that.
And they didn't waste any time either. They kind of just walked on to the point that Ambition made the plays happen. I want to say there's a decent amount of failure on Blank's side to support that. That being said, it's Huss with the failed tire. It just kind of gets whacked out of the sky there by Savage Dab, himself then dying to Ambition, who was probably looking for him while the tire was coming up. Pretty easy kill for Reaper. Then on the other side, you have Huwu not getting back into the mech. You get Tungi being picked out into the side, CKM dying before he gets a chance to use his barrage. A lot of things went very, very right for Incipience and went very horribly wrong for Blank.
And it does feel that there was just a lot that Blank weren't anticipating out of that. You know, the Reaper is one thing, sure, but I think they were expecting Incipience to maybe engage in a bit of a different way. They were expecting, you know, charging in more with Cryptic, leading with a Grav, but Incipience, they went a bit of a different route with that. Some good change-ups, taking Blank by surprise, and it was just enough to tip the balance in their favor, and that's what Incipience can do. That is, you know, I would have liked to have seen that 4 minutes earlier, but in any case, they did at least pull it out.
The other thing that happened in those 4 minutes earlier, right, was the fact that, I mean, Blank shut down these fights so quickly. Tire into a barrage, into a bunch of other ones. Huwu with the self-destruct, 2 kills, 3 kills, another 3 kills so quickly.
It's that ult economy again.
And we see it from the Ambition ult charge side of things. The guy spends multiple lives getting barely 50% on the ult charge. When Blank in the fight instantly, Incipience got nothing going for them, but when Blank can't land the ultimate, suddenly Incipience are in business.
It's not really reliable, though. That's the only unfortunate caveat to that. You don't want to rely on your opponent not quite getting the mileage they were after with their ultimates. It's a risky way to play. Could have been just as easily that Blank got another huge tire in that last fight. We won't be in this situation at all. But because we are, Incipients know full well that all they need to do is full hold on B, if not A, by the way. And that is very achievable, full holding on B.
And Cryptic is going to challenge us this time around as well, so this duel in particular is going to be a very interesting one, as it is Blank going to attempt to take early positioning onto this high ground.
Good dive here. Ooh, I was going to say, and you don't see Blank getting caught in rotation, but Husk gets shot out from that one. These tanks are having to kind of take a slow burn here. They haven't been able to just dislodge Incipience from the high ground. They have to start making some moves before Tung and Kura just get overpressured on the backside. Now moving forward, though, catch on Ambition, and they pop Xenofly's mech. Also getting Savage Dab very low. Fearless and Xeon Flux working double shift here, but unfortunately they're just a bit too exhausted. No paid breaks in this workhouse, and Incipience, they're going to collect their last paycheck.
And Blank should realistically try and stay on this composition here. They have ultimates very nearly ready to go here. Incipients don't. Infrasight's not going to do too much here. Blank Esports should be just charging down that straight line, building up this Dragon Blade, finishing off that fight, use everything they got, then consider changing comps after.
80% charge on the Infrasight. Not super useful, not super impactful, but it's everything else that's impressive, and it's the speed of that charge as well. Blank now coming in with a nice ultimate advantage. If they can leverage that, they could get that snowball. Xenofly, ooh, catching Trill. That's big for them. That really throws a spanner in the works here for Blank, even as they trade out with Fearless, who unfortunately failed to use the Valkyrie. Ambition, though, on the wrong side of this one. Blade from CKM. Doesn't get a lot, but it does force out that Transcendence from Xeon Flux. Now Incipients only have the Valkyrie. Swapping over to a Mei. They've actually stayed on this point without losing members despite losing Trill early. And he's going to be able to get back in this fight before too long. They're keeping a cap on Incipience's respawns.
We haven't seen any counter trades coming out of Incipience here. This is the real troubling factor for them. They got some defensive ultimates in time to block up the Dragon Blade, but they haven't gotten CKM down. In fact, they haven't killed anyone on Blank at all. Ambition with the Blade, but I don't know if he can use it.
He's going to have to at some point, but like you said, he can't really use it because he doesn't have the support. There's no healers to keep him topped off while he's using it. There's no tanks sitting in the thick of it with him. Has to go back, wait for a couple of other members. Xenofly, rather, has done a good job of stalling for Ambition. Yeah, gets one and traded straight out. Incipients have never been at a numerical advantage. By the way, the one that Ambition picked just got rezzed. Blank still own this point. Look at how safely set up Husk is, and now second blade of the fight for CKM, already getting more mileage than Ambition.
We're starting to see, Cryptic change onto Mei a little bit too early here. He's getting into a position where for Incipients, they just want to stall. They're stalling at the first tick. They haven't even lost anything. Ambition coming out as a doofus, not going to do any better, unfortunately. We are still not seeing Blank members going down.
And now that they're at that point where they may be committed to them too early, they're arriving at the point where they need them, because unfortunately, Blank are approaching now, rounding out on that second tip. More ults for Incipients, yeah, finally getting something, but more ults for Incipients, largely going wide. Rez straight in on CKM. They do get one again with an ultimate, but having to commit an entire self-destruct, only to leave Blank at what is still a numerical advantage, if not an ultimate advantage. Blizzard on the point is going to have to be a real rescue play. It forces Blank back, but it's not killed anyone. Now that it's run out, Blank straight back in, killed Cryptic. Incipients are naked here. They've got no ultimates, no tools, nothing left to go on, like a police station that got its toilet stolen, and Blank, I can't use that word on broadcast, never mind, but they are closing out this fight now.
And a third Dragon Blade going to clean up some more members here. We don't have any more ults except for the Coalescence, but Xeon Flux not even going to be alive to use that one. Blank, it did take an extra 2 minutes to kind of cap that one out, but you felt like it was inevitable. You felt like as soon as Blank got onto that point, got their early lead with the snowballs, it was a little bit slow because, again, Incipients had double defensive ultimates to counter out that first blade. But after that, they didn't get any kills during that ultimate. They didn't get any kills during the Transcendence or the Valkyrie. So if you're Blank here, you're like, well, we're staying. We're definitely staying. We're out-trading you significantly. In fact, it's not a trade because you're not giving anything back to Incipients. The one kill they managed to give away eventually got res back up anyway. And suddenly it was all over.
And that's the thing. It took so long because Incipients were great at stalling the point, but terrible at trading. And yeah, look, you can stall the point for ages. That's never going to make up for not being able to trade out, though, because it's the trades, it's the kills that force the defenders back over time. Stalling is only one part of that defensive skill set there. It's the part that makes those trades you get meaningful.
And the thing is, it's not even about, okay, you're bad at making trades. It's also about the fact that you're not looking at the sort of macro side here, which is to say, going back to before we even went to Anubis, we had this discussion about what does a snowball look like and how does the defense deal with that. You can get your team fully wiped out without trading a single member of the attacking team on that first tick. That's fine. You will respawn as 6 members by the time the third tick starts capping out, and you have a full 6v6 again. That just never happened for Incipience.
And that's the thing, you kind of end up giving up your win conditions sometimes when you go a bit too all in on that stall, when you don't respect the macro. But all that into the past now, Incipience, they have to tighten up that macro game quick, smart, here and now, if they really want to at least pull this to a draw. And for what it's worth, if it does go to a draw, it's still a blank win in the series. The series is a moot point, but Incipience, they still want to tighten the screws. They want to improve.
And I want to point out that Blank had a 1 attempt on this A point in their initial attack and a 1 attempt on their B point as well. So if we see that again, this could be all one and done, but Ambition actually finds the opening kill here.
Unfortunately gets traded back though. This is now rough for Incipience because a few members of Blank, the few are alive. They can sit tight on the point. Yeah, this is it. They're done. Just the last 3 members of Blank could sit on the point. They still had sightlines for Huss. He was dead safe. Incipience are in a position where they are forced onto the point and don't really have the numbers to back that up and dislodge Blank. Off the back of that, the 1/3 they need is going to go the way of Blank. And Incipience were trading. Things were going well. Unfortunately, it was the wrong members getting traded for the wrong members. That wasn't necessarily Incipience's fault. It's just how it fell, and Blank took full advantage of it.
And I think this is a scenario where, for a lot of teams, you look at the kind of kills Incipience are getting. For those attacking teams that are not Blank, you'd expect, okay, that's kind of a failed fight for the attackers here, but for Blank, time and time again, and I'll use Eichenwald as an example here as well, that defensive play by Blank on Eichenwald on that B point, they were bleeding members, they were getting traded out, but they were never truly out of the fight. And eventually, and this feels like another inevitability of Blank, is they will just kind of out-clutch you in those scenarios. When both teams are kind of down and sort of out of there, Blank don't feel like they're out of there.
And I think one of the big things, one of the big proponents of that, and again, actually a bit of a parallel you can draw to Eichenwald, is playing the objective. They're playing the objective even when they're low, because they know that if they do get an opportunity to turn things around, they want to have that objective pressure there so that they can make the most of it, so that they can take advantage of it. On Eichenwald, if they don't lose too many members before they get a full round of respawns, they're already on the card, they're already ready to fight, and Incipience haven't got as much progress as they otherwise would have. Same thing there. The two teams, they've traded out a bit, so Blank, they sit on the point, they force Incipience to play the point itself, and if Blank can get a couple members in or get a couple of extra picks, they tip the balance and they're already on the point. They are already in position to take full advantage and get that 1/3.
Now, I do want to speak of progression here as well, because earlier tonight we said, look, Incipience after that map 1 on Oasis, again, back-to-back 100-0 from Blank, we're sort of saying, okay, well, we need to start seeing them get some more positive trades here. Put Blank to the back foot. They did do that on Eichenwald, to their credit. They lost, got fully held on to B, not a great result, but a better result than Oasis. Going into Anubis map, they were sort of saying, okay, now we need to start seeing Incipience get a full cap out. They need to finish the map. That would be their only chance to win this. They did do that. To their credit, again, they managed to get that expectation, but they sort of still just shy away from actually threatening Blank for that win. So moving on to map number 4, moving on to Rialto, what more progression is left for Incipience? They've gone from not even infecting Blank to getting some trays into finishing a map. Can they do all of that now in Rialto and then beat Blank?
And you'd like to think that certainly it's a possibility, but you also do have to, you kind of have to consult your inner realist and go, look, the progression is there, but so far it's not been enough, and there's still a lot of ways they have to go. You know, they're getting those trade outs, sure, but they finished the map with no time to spare. They capped out point A with pretty much no time to spare.
You know what, I
capped out point B with one opportunity to fight. It was a good one. It was a blowout one. You compare that to Blank, who were effectively the opposite. One fight on A, one fight on B.
Yeah, you know what, I got the milestone ready for Incipience here. This is what they need to realistically achieve here. Even if they don't beat Blank, they need some resounding fight wins, because that is the one thing that to me is still left unchecked for them. They're starting to get some trades in, they're starting to finish maps, all of that jazz. But one thing they're not doing that we've seen a lot of on Anubis, especially in those moments where it's Incipience really clutching, really trying to stay in the game. That A defense rather on Time Bank, very obvious example here where even when both teams look very down, it's Blank that are able to finish that fight. So for Incipience, they need to be the ones to do that now. They need a resounding fight win.
And that's what CAG were able to do to Blank. I mean, there's other parts to that as well. Certainly, they were also pressuring Blank more in the first place, but I think you're right. I mean, it's kind of the crucial component, the secret ingredient, if you will, the Big Mac sauce that's been missing here.
And if they want to win, if they actually want to win the map, they need multiple resounding fight wins.
They need multiple Big Macs.
One. Sure. This isn't Contenders Australia, by the way. But what I do want to say is, like, one resounding fight win will get them some really, really good progress. Multiple resounding fight wins will actually get them the map, so this is what they need to be looking for.
Just really like the way those stone railings crumble. And judging by what they're currently doing, so does Trill. And Huwu.
Seeing again, by the way, this is a little bit new, maybe not too new, but it is Trill playing a lot of Orisa tonight, by the way. Usually we would see a Reinhardt on the defense here for the defensive side on Blank, but I like to see what Trill can pull off here with the Orisa.
CKM getting a bit of a funky wraparounds just to pop Savage Dab off with the concussive blast. And that's actually slowed Incipience altogether. Here's the front shield that they actually need to get over this bridge because of that spam damage. Kind of the ideal pick, and it's already 30 seconds off the clock. Only approaching this first bend now. Incipience, though, underway, should be able to get into the courtyard.
So now the weakness here for Blank is if Incipience can really get into a melee brawl here. That will be difficult for Blank to deal with withdrawing to the Orisa. However, it is still Blank getting a decent amount of picks. If Ambition can find something on the flank, that would really help them out.
And that's really key. But Ambition, as he's been moving on this flank, has often been eating quite a few shots, has to pull back to his healers. Yeah, Barrage ready to go for CKM is going to be the real humdinger for Incipience to get past. And they don't quite yet have anything like that Transcendence to counter it out. Blank have had enough time here that they're just kind of getting in position for whatever it is they want to pull out when the time is right.
We might not even see a Barrage. Yeah, we're going to see one anyway.
That was excellent timing on that, by the way.
But I was going to argue that for CKM's case, they had already gotten themselves a kill onto Incipience. Incipience were already looking like they want to back off here. I think for CKM's good to use the Barrage and then not have used it, and still they would have been in the lead for that fight. Still, they would have probably wasted a lot of time on the Incipience side, won the fight anyway, and then have used a Barrage back when Incipience were ready to push again.
Second kill with the concussive blast there for CKM. This one was on Cryptic, which is still pretty crucial as it alleviates any pressure that would otherwise be on CKM. Incipients have kind of changed things up altogether. They don't want to run the shield comp. They want to be able to dive more aggressively into this courtyard. They don't want to let Huss and CKM get these positions for free.
They are sort of making their way into the courtyard now, but they're still losing members. Look at the pressure. Cryptic got nothing on Huss on this map so far, unfortunately for him. And for Incipients, for every inch they get, they just have to walk back a foot.
And it's the unfortunate thing here. I mean, it's not like, you know, it's not like one step forward, or sorry, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You know, it's slow going, but it's progress like it was on Eichenwalder. This is just being completely stopped up now. This is normally the point where an attacker can actually start running away with things. You can bring it into that courtyard, especially when you're running a dive comp here and you throw the defenders into disarray, into chaos, starting to get some pressure on them now, but really it's Incipients burning the ultimates to get a leg in this fight. Savage Dab trying to dive. Tongue, he had a Transcendence there that he didn't even need to use. Incipients are going full panic mode, and they're not even out of time yet.
And I want to point out here, this is actually Incipients having the initiative. They are now starting the fights first, which is a good step for them to be able to do, but Blank still get the positive trades. Still not enough pressure off the Huss. Cryptic's been trying to counter-snipe, but he's been the one getting counter-sniped the entire time. Meanwhile, Huss gets DMX onto the other side. Huss gets a lot of pressure onto the tanks, and for Incipients, very hard for them to follow up when Huss is doing so much damage.
And once again, here's the dive for Savage Dab, but by the time he gets there, he's just kind of a man alone, and that leaves his backline exposed. Some trades finally coming in now, though. Both Pharaohs off the table and Ambition starting to do work. Without Tongue there, without that Transcendence available, Blank are much more fallible. Trill, the supercharger off the table. Huwu is slowly making his way into this as Ambition is sticking in the brawl. They're getting the work done thanks to Luckily, Fearless staying alive that time around. And look at all the tools Blank weren't able to use for that one.
I want to say here, Blank are not quite out of this one just yet. The foundations were set because they had stopped up the count for so long, because we're now into overtime. Blank have all their members back alive and they're ready to challenge. They're ready to full hold on A.
Oh, that could be the real killer there. Xenofly, not just losing his mech, but then also dying. At least took out Huwu's mech before that happened. Tungo, there's the Transcendence. It's run out, and Ambition has the blade. Incipience, they have tools here. CKM, 1-for-1. Not ideal, because here's this blade at long last going hunter-killer on Tongue. Oh, no! A few too many swings. Huss sees it, swings around, gets the shot, and now Incipience slowly running out of gas here as Blank's tanks hold and own this choke point. And that was the entire length of Rialto time-wise to not even break the courtyard. Even the amount of time they'd spent getting into the courtyard and then couldn't even get out of it after that. Unfortunate for Incipience. It looked like they finally had that fight win, but didn't quite get the momentum.
We're seeing Ambition really pull out some good plays here. On Anubis, it was part due to him onto the Reaper, finding the kill onto Huss, and then sort of converting onto other players with the rest of his team, dodging out that Riptide here, going into Rialto, the Genji coming out through here. We didn't even see the blade on that initial string of kills that he got. When he did get the blade, surprisingly, that was when he started to fall away. But again, it was Blank because they had played so much time, because the count just didn't quite have the distance, and Trill dying late enough that Blank Esports had the time where Trill was still alive to get themselves regrouped. Trill jumps back onto Reinhardt, charges back into the fray of action. Blank already as 6 again, and Incipience just didn't have the momentum to finish.
Now on their own defense, Incipience need to be able to do that same kind of thing, need to give Blank that same treatment. Need to find ways to stop them up, slow them down, pick them off, and not let them crack that courtyard. 4 whole minutes of that is quite an ask.
I want to say for Incipience, this is definitely possible. They can win here because the cart distance is technically still good enough. Had the cart had only stopped at the choke point, maybe somewhere among this middle section of the courtyard, you'd say Blank Esports, they win a choke point fight, they push into the courtyard, they've got it done, they've won 4-0. But because Incipience at least got it to the end of the A point, despite not capping it out, that's possible. They can still get a miracle defense right at the end, same way Blank did, coming back as 6, finish the choke point fight, lead it into overtime, get it done.
Exactly, that's the thing, it's possible. And I like this forward setup here from Incipience. Again, it's harassing Blank. If someone does get picked off here, slows them down a lot, but have not been picked off. And Blank are going full dive in their own right, which I'm really liking here, because they know that they only need to break one position once. Even if they can just start forcing Incipience back, leave them reeling as they try and pull back, they can crack this courtyard.
It's about the high ground control as well. You'll notice that Incipience have already started to fall back. The Khan is already in a position where it can immediately push into that courtyard once Blank, and if they can win this fight, they do already get a lead.
Yeah, there's the opening, and unfortunately Ambition being beset on all sides. CKM has come around one side, you see Huss on the other, while the rest of Blank march the payload down the middle. Now starting to take advantage of this advantage of the tanks not being there. Legend, what am I even saying? Savage Dab, that's his name. Only just alive, making his way back into the fight. That's a punish dive, though. That's what Incipience need more of. Now moving forward in their own right, trying to pressure Blank backwards. Need to not lose any members in so doing, but it looks like they're going to be able to regain ownership of this payload.
Even if Blank loses this fight, it does appear like they're going to have to fully reset here. 4 members, now 5 fully down for Blank. The work has again been done. You talked about the fact that Blank have focused on objective pressure as a key proponent of this offense and of their defenses. Right now, again, look at where the cart position is on this map into the courtyard. That's a winnable position. Now, even with where that finish line is, if Blank win a fight, they fully cap out.
Blank are just continuing the same game plan here, going for a dive. Ambition barrages that alleyway, or rather that archway, so that Blank can't go through it, but they're happy to just back off, go another way around now, and that means Incipience, that rocket barrage, that massive tool, it gets nothing for them.
By the way, Blank...
Oh, this is unavoidable.
Had a lot of ultimates. It could be avoidable.
As I say that. But that one wasn't, apparently. That's already a numbers advantage for Blank, unfortunately for Incipience, and they're able to keep these members topped off. Trill getting aggressive, Xenofly gonna lose the mech, and they've managed to separate him off from his supports. Good pick on Kura keeps things tenable here for Incipience, but it is on the precipice, especially now as Cryptic gets picked off. Incipience, it's Fearless and Xenon Flux that are anchoring this defense here. Savage Dab with the Primal Rage, but with Fearless and Xenon Flux dead, they're getting dove on by CKM and Huss. There's nowhere for the tanks to fall back to. Ambition as well goes down. Xenoflight only just got back in and is going to go straight back out as his co-tank dies, and that's the last hurrah for Incipience as Blank round the corner, leave the courtyard, and collect their 4-0.
And they started that fight with 4 ultimates as well. I think even nearly 5 ultimates. Incipience didn't have anything close to that, but by the time that Blank actually decided to pull the trigger, Incipience were just kind of already falling backwards, gave away too much positioning. You could see here, even from CKM's Dragonblade, off the back of Ambition's play of the game here, which by the way was a very good play that gave them a lot of space to work with. CKM didn't overcommit. Ambition wanted to go for tongue on the backline, all the way on the other side of the bridge. CKM said, focus on the goal here. Eyes on the prize. Get the members off the cart with your blade. Push the cart to the finish line. That's all you got to do. You don't need any other fancy kills. You just got to finish that payload.
And because they did that, they collect their 4-0. Oasis, Eichenwalde, Temple of Anubis, and then Rialto to round it out. Blank, after suffering a loss in their very first match, this feels like a bit of a return to form, or at least a return to what we expect of this team. And that's not to say anything ill of Incipience. This is more just to speak to the caliber of Blank. Off the back of this, I think we can say that that new goal, if you will, of let's get out of this group in second, assuming we can't get first anymore because of that loss, this is exactly what they need on that way. They've got another major obstacle still in Hong Kong Attitude, but this is a positive sign.
And I do want to speak on to Hong Kong Attitude side as well, because when we did have that matchup that they had against Incipience in week 1, that was a 3-1 victory for Hong Kong Attitude, and not nearly as convincing or nearly as comfortable as it was for Blank Esports. Look at even the difference of a Temple of Anubis. That's a win for Incipience right here against Hong Kong Attitude. On Temple of Anubis against Blank, you'd say it was probably still Incipience's best map, but their best map was still, unfortunately, a bit of a whitewash in favor of Blank. It was all Blank, all the way. You just never really felt like Blank were really ever going to lose. The one mishap that Blank did have cost them a full hold on to B, which was in overtime anyway, and for Blank, I mean, they go into the time bank, they won attempted A, they won attempted B, time bank won attempted A again. It was just all too easy.
And that's the thing, beyond that, you're right, it looked comfortable, and even then, not quite getting that full hold on B, I mean, that's not even bad play at that point. That can just happen, you know, and it could have happened with 3 minutes left on the clock, it could have happened in overtime like it did. It's really speaking to the difference between these two teams here, and I think you're quite right. It then also gives us a good comparative metric for Blank against Hong Kong Attitude, and that's why we bring this up, this notion of Blank are still most likely the team that comes out of this group in second place now that they can't get first. And you might even consider that by the time we get to the end of group stages, were that to be the week in which Blank play CAG, maybe it could even be a different result.
And I was saying, based on the results from CAG versus Blank in week 1, right? Blank need to get the full 5 weeks worth of practice and the time to match up against Hong Kong Attitude. So it was a good thing for Blank to only have to play Hong Kong Attitude in week 5. But after seeing this result, I think Blank would be happy to play Hong Kong Attitude tonight, even just right now for the next match.
Yeah, now
line them both up. I mean, for Blank, they're looking much rejuvenated. Part of the theme for this opening match was who gets the recovery. And for Blank, I'd say this is like a full, this is like a full rejuvenation. And Incipience,
miraculous recovery, as it were. And now it's Hong Kong Attitude who are going to be glad that they've got the extra 4 weeks before they have to come up against Blank. I want to speak to the other side of that recovery, though, which is, of course, Incipience. Because I think despite the loss against Hong Kong Attitude and despite the loss now, there are still very real improvements being made. You saw them map to map there. It's hard to really speak to the week to week because of the difference between Hong Kong Attitude and Blank here. But at any rate, you do still see the points of improvement. And certainly you see where Incipience have had big issues exposed. There are some very obvious direct things that they can now go away and address. They've got a week to do that in before they can come back swinging in what should hopefully be some slightly quote-unquote easier matches for them. There is very much still a world where this is the 4th place finisher in this group. The real tell is not going to be how do they perform against the Blanks, Hong Kong Attitudes, and CAGs of the group. It's going to be against all the other teams.
And I think for Incipience as well, because they get their harder matches out of the way first. Hong Kong Attitude week 1, Blank into week 2 as well. I don't quite remember when they play CAG. Somewhere in the mix, you'd hope for Incipience. I mean, there's 2 ways you do it. You either hope for them to play CAG in week 5 to get their best shot, or if they're going to lose to CAG, get that done and dusted out of the way early so they can get those wins in the later weeks against the other 2 remaining teams so that they can still finish in the top 4, which does get them into the playoffs. And I think right now, based on what we've seen, that should be Incipience's goal. They know they're probably not going to be among the top 2. Number 3 is still going to be questionable because CAG is in the mix. So number 4 has to be the goal.
And unfortunately for Incipience, that was probably always going to be the case. That's just how Group B is right now. You've got 3 teams that are all but guaranteed to make it through. The other 3 are going to have to scrap and brawl for that 1 remaining slot.
And now we're going to be done with Group B, at least for the time being. When we come back from the break, we're going to see Group A. It's going to be EXL Esports versus Monster Shield Korea. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you after this.